So what would you normally be doing today if we weren't here?
Working downstairs, doing water changes, feeding, and changing box filters. There's about 200 box filters.
That many?
Yeah, so I try to change them all within a month, but some of them have to be changed like every week, week and a half. Like all the Pleco ones have to be changed more frequently.
So it's just like on a daily basis. Like how does your day start then?
I get started, I do all my emails first. And many people write me and they say, "Oh, you're so busy. I really hate to bother you, but I got a question." And it's like, "No, man, this is my favorite part of the day. It's when I first get up and I'm answering emails, and every email is different, which is cool." And so I have a lot of friends that write me regularly, so I do that. And it used to take me till 10 to 11 to get emails done. Lately, I've been getting them done around 10. I usually start around 5:36. And then once...
So wait, you do 5 hours of emails?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, I used to get 30 to 40 a day. Now I'm running between 10 and 20 a day.
I wish I could give you a job doing mine.
Well, there's a big secret to it, and maybe it can help you as
Yeah.
well. I had a customer a long time ago said to me, because I was complaining about emails, and I was having problems. I had carpal tunnel on both wrists, and my elbows were acting up. So this customer said, "Man, you just need to go with Dragon." And I said, "What's Dragon?" And he said, "Well, it's vocal software, and you just talk, and then it just types what you're saying." And I was like, "Ooh." So I went with the first version. I've been using Dragon now for over 10 years. So every time I get an email, someone writes me a question, and then I look at it as if I'm sitting in a chair behind a counter at a fish store, and someone walks up and asks me a question. And I just answer it, and it comes out on the email. And so some people say, "How come you write so much back to me?" And I said, "Well, because I'm just talking, I'm like having a conversation." So I can afford to have really comfortable and complete, explanations for things. So I've been doing the voice software now for a long time. I couldn't do this without it. There's no way I could get through that many emails without
Just
it.
all the typing and all that.
So that helps a lot, yeah.
So then 10 o'clock, and then you get straight down to the fish room?
At 10 o'clock, when I first get up, I make a coffee and I check my PayPal account and see if any orders came in overnight for any levamisols or fertilizers or whatever. And if they do, then I go ahead and I print them up. And then I keep in mind that I have shipments to go out that day. And then I may have fish shipments to go out that day. So when I get my emails done at 9:30, 10 o'clock, then the first thing I do is I go down and I type up the invoices for the shipping. So that when you get something from me and it has a typed out label and it has a typed out printout sheet, that's all done that morning. And then yes, I make up every order that day. So I don't have a huge pile of 10-gram levamisols made up. I go right to the stock source that I originally get, and I make up every order individually. So what everybody gets hasn't been exposed to air or light, and it's fresh. But 10 o'clock, then I make up all the paperwork and I put the orders together. And like say if it's a shipping day where I'm shipping out 2 or 3 boxes of fish, then I'm usually done with getting the fish out to the post office 2:30ish, and then I come back and then I get started on downstairs. And on days when I'm shipping and I don't have to do everything, I just do water changes for the whole room and I feed everybody. But days when I'm not shipping, then it's a case of there's a number of things. Either I'm going through and changing box filters. I try to change canister filters at least every other day. But it's just a routine that you get into. And then restarting all those siphons in the alcove that we talked about, and checking and seeing which ones have stopped, and then get them started. And then I try to get down here, get back upstairs and out of the fish room by 4:35 the latest. And then as I mentioned, I still play and perform every day. So then I'll usually practice for about 2 hours.
You play trumpet?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And then a quick dinner, and my wife comes home from work about 5:36, and then if I have any website work to do or YouTube video work to do or whatever, then I'll do it in the evening. And I used to sit up until 1, 2 in the morning doing that kind of work till late, but I don't do that anymore. So right now I'm working on a recording, which was a trumpet solo that was really famous back in the 1960s. And I used to perform it back in in the early 80s I performed it last. And I thought it would be kind of a cool thing, so I wrote a big band arrangement of it, and I play in a big band down in Denver once a week. So I'm having that band perform the accompaniment, and I'm doing the solo over it. We're going to record it the next 2-3 weeks, and then it will be I'm building a video over it, which will be like a fish room gallery, which essentially is going to be what you did today, but it's going to be put to the music.
Yeah, so for everyone that doesn't know, we just filmed like a pretty in-depth tour of the room. Now, I didn't get to see the room when I first saw it on YouTube, which was Corey's video, which is how I found you. But that used to be quite a serious room with like 50 different species of all
I always
sorts of
maintain
stuff.
about 30 different species.
Yeah.
And then I tried to maintain 14 on the website available at a time. And one day, as I was talking to you before, it occurred to me, I was doing all this work and trying to keep everything breeding and everything going, and I had that schedule I told you about where every half hour I've got the whole day blocked out. I used to actually have a thing printed up on the wall. And I'm also an animal care facility for the state, so they do inspections. So their inspections are where you get a phone call and it says, "Are you there? Yeah, can I be there in 5 minutes?" Yeah. And so then you run around and pick up any buckets or hoses or whatever, and then they come and they do an inspection. And they love that printout on the wall of my daily schedule, you know. But the thing about that schedule was that, you know, I'm not always breeding Odessa barbs, or I'm not always doing whatever. So it changed over time. I got to know my schedule well enough that I didn't have to have it printed on the wall, but they still love it. But so I one day it occurred to me that most of my emails were telling people how yes, I have this fish, I bred them out and I sold them and they're gone now and I don't have them now and they won't be available again until the next breeding season. And in my fish room, everything breeds seasonally. So I was spending 2/3 of the year telling people I didn't have things. And then I thought, gosh, if I could only get it down to where I'm only carrying, say, 5 to 10 species tops, but I have them in numerous breeding groups where I have my numbers up high enough that they're generally always available, then I can be shipping out fish more regularly. It would actually be, you know, more profitable, and I would piss off fewer people, you know, people who write me and says, you know, I've been waiting for your such and such for 3 years, and every time I call you, you tell me you're sold out. And it's like, well, I put up these availability videos. Well, so the way to solve that was to make up an availability video, and then put it out, and then it says, you know, hey, this is how many I have. They're available now. Please email me, send me your zip code, and I'll send you back a quote. But when I put them up, then the fish sell out right away. So when I did that 4 years in a row with the green dragons, and every year I would sell 160 green dragons, and they would sell out in under an hour. And the last one went out in 42 minutes. I mean, they're $270 an order, you know, with 4 plus 1 plus the shipping. So personally, I'm like, I don't have that kind of money to spend on fish, you know, but still people, you know, really want them. And so it was solving my problem of getting fish out to people somewhat where they knew what was going to happen, but it wasn't solving my problem of satisfying the greatest number of people, you know. And every once in a while I'll get somebody who will write me and says, you know, can you make up 30 pairs of green dragons for me? It's like, no, I really can't sell you 30 pairs. Well, aren't you the guy that does? Well, yes, but I would have to have thousands of them and thousands of them on hand to be able to do that, you know. So what I did was this coming up year, I have you know, green dragons that are coming up, and I'm going to sell them as young sexed pairs, only my best quality fish. And I've taken a wait list. The wait list is already filled out, and I'm not taking any more on the wait list. And then as soon as the fish that I have downstairs show firm signs of being males and females, and they're good quality fish, then I'll start shipping them out, hopefully the end of the spring toward the summer of this year. But if it runs later than that, I plan on videotaping where all the fish are at, and then putting up a private channel on YouTube, and then writing all the people on the wait list and say, hey, look, I haven't forgotten you. You know, I know you're on the wait list. Here's a video of where they are right now. You can see they're going to be about another 2 months. You know, you're number 6 on the wait list. Don't worry, I'm not going to lose you. It might be late summer or early fall before you actually get your fish, but these are the last fish I'm going to offer as, you know, select aquatics, so just hang tight. And I don't think I'm going to have a problem with selling them. And then when all the waitlist people are satisfied, as you saw the fish that are down there, I'm probably going to have more than that left over. Then I'll put them up at the website and say, okay, hey, they're available right now.
For those who don't know, so Greg's run a basement fish room business breeding for the past 15 years.
Yeah.
And it's quite crazy to see. I mean, you said you're down to 85 tanks. How big was it at one point?
120 I had for a long time.
Yeah. And like, yeah, you're just breeding a ton of fish. And I think one of the best things about your business is your customer service, for sure.
Well, thanks.
Definitely. Like, I remember, because you were in the car this morning and we were talking. It's okay. Oh, there's a dog there. And you were saying that, like, you'd sold these Montezuma swordtails to customers, and that 3 years later you were checking up to see how they went and all that
Right.
sort of stuff. Like, I've just barely heard of any company doing that.
Well, it's pretty funny because I was at a talk one time and someone was asking me about the Montezumas and their care and how what kind of luck customers have had with them. So I started telling the same story, and I explained, how I sent out 65 emails to my customers, and just asked them, hey, how are they doing? Did they do well? If they did well, anything you want to share? And any feedback you want to give? And the feedback I did get, it's still posted on my homepage at the website now, as well as how I take care of them. But I said this to this group at one of the fish clubs I was at, and they listened to me very politely. And then someone raised their hand after I said that, and I says, "Yeah, what's up?" And he says, "You know who you shipped fish to that you could contact them?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's a business, you have to keep track of who you send stuff to, He's like, "Nobody does that."
No, it's crazy.
I'm like, my accountant would take me out and have me shot if I didn't,
So you've run it for 15 years. Obviously, you've been breeding fish since you were a little boy.
Yeah.
But how did the business kind of come about?
I joined the ALA in the late '90s because I wanted to find out who
ALA is
American Live Bear Association.
Yep.
Because I wanted to find out who these big breeders were that had these big fish rooms that were breeding all the big fancy swordtails. And so I joined this group, and I came I came to find out essentially that those people didn't exist anymore. There's no longer many bald, older, heavy-set guys in their basements full of 55-gallon tanks breeding horses that and so it was really a shame to see that a lot of what the U.S. used to be known for in the '60s that was mostly gone. So I started getting a hold of the fish that I could get a hold of, and I started selling them at conventions and shows. And I started that around 2000, started taking fish to shows. And I was one of those that would have the line forming up outside my door, my hotel, and I would sell fish at the conventions and shows. And then one day I ordered a bunch of supplies from a well-known fish supplier who sent me $150 of bricks, of just rocks. They were food. It was the food, but it had been stored improperly. It had been, and I'm like,
was it meant to be like flakes or?
Oh, it was. I can't say what it's going to call, because if I say what name it is, it'll tell who the manufacturer is. But they make a block of food that you can break off with your fingers and feed to your fish, and it's very it's supposed to be very soft, and they make various types of pellets that are soft and all this, and it all came to me, and it was ting ting ting, rock is hard as rock. And so I wrote them, and I said, hey, I explained what happened, we're so sorry, oh my goodness, we'll refund your money, we'll take care of it. Okay, great. We wait a couple of weeks, don't hear anything more from them. Call them again. Then I started phone calling them. And it went on for about 5 weeks. And it got to the point where they were just they were angry at me. I'm like, look, I'm just waiting for a reaction to this situation. You should never have sent this stuff to anybody. But yet you did. And I gave it to a bunch of friends who had some big cichlids, and they said they'll eat anything. And these lumps sat on the bottom of the tank. But anyway, when I finished that fiasco, I never got reimbursed. I never got more food. They were nothing but nasty to me. So I thought, oh man, this business needs somebody that's friendly, that people can contact, and just as a friend and say, hey, you have this. Can I get it from you? What's it going to cost? What are you going to do to get it to me? And so now today I have people who write their fish guy on Christmas morning. My wife says, who writes their fish guy on Christmas Day? And I says, well, people write me. They ask me questions, So anyway, I decided to start really being big on customer service and being very clear about what I sold and what I didn't sell and how I was going to operate my business. And I had people at first that approached me and they try to scam you and they try to take advantage. And it's like, no, this is how it works, And it's been great. I haven't really had any run-ins with anybody, and I have lots of friends, and I've gotten to know many, many people, and I speak all over the country. So I think I mentioned to you that I feel as if I've met probably half of my customer base around the country from speaking to places.
Isn't that insane? Like you've built up this like goodwill of just a brand of your fish.
Yeah.
Like it's like these people just like trust you, you know, like so much that they like email you like you're like, well, you're obviously their friend.
Yeah.
But I just find that insane. Like, cause yeah, when you look at the business, it's like it'd be quite hard to find Select Aquatics, like in the midst of like all of what's on the internet. It's
Right.
like, you know, you find like the classic stuff, but it's like because you've met all these people and you've formed all of these relationships, they still buy from you.
Yeah, and
You're like a cult figure in a way. Like,
well, and zoos and aquariums were ordering a lot from me at first, and so I was shipping out a lot to zoos and public aquariums and research institutions and universities. Back when shipping was possible, I could ship 90 pairs to a university. I did that like 6 times.
90 pairs of.
90 pairs.
What did you ship?
Zophophorus alvarezi, primarily.
What is that?
That's a swordtail, type of a swordtail.
Did it like go extinct or?
No, they're just they're one of the swordtails you don't see in pet stores, and they're a wild swordtail. But I used to ship out in I ship in those kinds of quantities. Now to ship that large of a box would cost many hundreds of dollars. So I no longer ship to as many zoos and aquariums as I used to. But I receive notice every couple months from a new zoo or aquarium. What happened is they went out to these zoos and aquariums and they reproduced them and bred them, and then they can ship them to one another cheaply. So then they'll write me and they'll say, we just received some fish that supposedly came from you in 2010. Are these your fish? Do you remember shipping them to this aquarium? Are they your fish? And I'd say yes. So I know that my fish are getting out throughout the country. What always surprised me, I'm finally starting to see some other people that are breeding the green dragons. And a lot of people are finding out how difficult they are because they're a new morph, and when you create a new morph of anything, it's going to take you many generations for them to breed consistently. Guppy breeders talk about it taking 11 generations to breed, to solidify a trait, but green dragons have a year generation time. So that's 11 years to get a
minimum.
trait, minimum. And so I had some fish in my 4th generation that were finally what I was looking for. They were really big, and the color green was great, the finish was great. So I used them for breeders for longer than a year. So I tell people that I'm in my 8th generation, and that's kind of washy. I'm probably somewhere between 6 and 9. But it's going to be a while yet before they breed consistently. So if I produce 1,000 fish, then I might get out of those 1,000. Well, I usually produce about 2,000 fish. And that's where I get my 160 of the green dragons that get sold.
Well, you make 2,000
I breed up 2,000 fish, and then I end up with 160.
just to get the green dragons.
Right, to get the long fin green dragons that are good color green, good finnage, that look really great. And then the rest are going to be albinos, short fins, fish of poor color, fish of poor finnage, whatever. So, out of a group of every 100, as I mentioned, I only get about 20 or so that are good quality long fin fish. And that's just because the line is getting better over time. It used to be 10, in 100.
Yeah.
And so when I first started selling green dragons, I had a couple people up in Minnesota who bought from me. I used to sell them in batches of 30 for $7.50 a piece. This is back when I first started. And so I had a few people up in Minnesota who bought groups of 30 of them from me. 3 of them did. And so, I wasn't concerned what they were going to do with them, but I just said to them, maintain my work, make sure they're good. Well, they bred the wazoo out of them, and then they sold them whatever they produced.
Wait, they sold like albinos and
Albinos, blackfish, fish with short fins, whatever. They just sold everything. I imagine they didn't sell the albinos as longfin green dragons, but they did sell everything that wasn't, an albino. And so I started getting emails, like a lot, about 3 years later, at least once a month, sometimes weekly, from people saying, I bought green dragons, and this is my fish, and is this one of your fish? And I'd look at it, and I would just cringe, because they were ugly fish, and they weren't green, and they didn't have good finnage. And so then I had someone write me one time, and he said, you're a con artist, you're a scam artist. I said, what are you talking about? He says, you talk about these green dragons, they're not green, they don't look like a dragon.
yeah.
I forget what else he listed, And so I said, look, they really are, but I have people out there that are selling my fish, that are breeding them improperly, and you're being sold fish that are not what they should be. Green dragons really are green. And he says, well, you're going to have to prove it to me. So I came out with a video called Update in Green Dragon Color many years ago. And it showed what my young looked like, and it showed what good green color looked like. And the whole video was about don't sell fish that don't look like this. You're just going to have fish produced that look like crap, and those you don't sell. That's not what. Just because they come from it doesn't mean that that's what they are. So anyway, I started the ugly fish email stopped immediately. It was just a hoot that people stopped sending me pictures saying, "Hey, these your fish." And that guy who was so angry actually wrote me back and apologized, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah, I love
because
that.
he ended up on some forums, and I guess he was a big guy, really bad mouthing what I was doing. And so he wrote me back and said, I saw your video,
I try and do whatever I can with my business to avoid those customers.
Yeah.
Like anything. Like there's nothing worse. Like a lot of people when they start don't realize like something will happen, you don't have a lot of money. So like you'll have something go wrong. Like say you sent out a batch of green dragons and they went bad. It's like easier to just lose the money or resend the fish than it is to have like, even if it's not your fault, like even if you think they screwed it up and like it happens all the time with live fish, like people will buy stuff, put it in their tank and it'll die in their tank because of something they did.
Right.
It's like completely not your fault. But then like they think it is, and it's just like, honestly, so much easier sometimes just to like let that just go. And
whenever you have someone with anger, it's always better to pay them off. And that's what I always do. And what I figure is that it's marketing. Because
totally.
I don't pay to advertise. So whoever's watching this, don't say all of a sudden you buy fish from me and they died, you're going to call me back and I'm going to send you back the money.
Exactly.
I try to give as much information as possible about how to take care of these fish so that someone doesn't get them and kill them. And I try to make sure that people feel so inundated and comfortable with information when they receive them that they're not going to run into trouble. And if they do, it's because of doing something that I told them not to do. So I've never had that situation. But what I have had situations are when post office put a box on the bottom of a pallet and it sat on a cold concrete floor, and then it gets delivered in time maybe to somebody, but the fish are dead.
Yeah.
And so I have always been prepared for that, and I put in my contract that I make up for everybody when they buy a fish. It says I'll refund the money for your fish, but I will never refund your shipping costs because I don't get that back. If I send a fish out, and
We
post
do the
office
same
fills
thing,
this-
I think.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that I had a young boy who was in high school, I believe, and he ordered some fish from me, and they arrived to him dead, and they got there in the right amount of time. And his mom, boy, she just thought for sure his son had just hooked up with a real scam artist. And she went to an attorney, and I'm like, relax, my God, And so I refunded the money for the fish back. I want every penny for the shipping back. And it was like you say, it was just worth it to send her back to her and just...
Totally. Like it's like the last thing you want someone going through every Google review, every Instagram page and telling every single person in the world about you. Like they literally don't sleep at night because they're thinking about you.
Every time you have something happen, it's an opportunity to make things better.
Yeah. Looking at it as an opportunity is probably the best way.
Exactly. If someone isn't physically injured or if someone isn't really losing money, it's an opportunity. And so I do my best I can to make the person as happy as possible. I once had a situation where
I feel like your whole business is that situation too.
Yeah, well, that's just it. Today, with social media, someone gets online, everybody knows, and like for me, I try to maintain a really good reputation. If someone has dirt on me, it's going to go through the internet really quickly.
And
it's going to take me forever to get out of that. And so I always try to avoid having that happen. But I had one time, I screw up very rarely, but I do screw up. And I one time sent a box of green dragons, a guy who was waiting for them forever, I had his box being made up, and I had another guy that had a box of Odessas, and his box made up. Don't know how it happened. Of 6,500 boxes of fish I've shipped since the beginning of Select Aquatics, had to happen once, but the green dragons went to the Odessa guy, and the Odessas went to the green dragon guy.
We've done that too.
Have you?
Yeah.
It's you can't help it,
Yeah, I know.
And so, and for me, when I'm selling the green dragons,
We
they're-
sold like some really expensive fish too. They were like some Dark Knight Rams, and they went to the wrong person, and they were like $200 a pair. And this person was like expecting a completely different fish, like guppies or something. And they didn't like. They just fell in a gold mine.
Right, right. Well, the guy who was waiting for the green dragons for so long, of course, didn't get them, and he was pissed. And then the guy that got the Odessas, who was waiting for the green dragons, he was pissed. Well, no, the guy that got but the guy who got the green dragons was waiting for the Odessas. He got the green dragons, and to my luck, he opened up the box, saw they were green dragons and weren't Odessas, and to him that was like the best possible thing that could have ever happened. So he was thrilled, that I
Yeah.
got the, don't worry about sending me Odessas. No, this is I'm fine with this, and I mean he got like $200 more worth of fish.
Exactly.
But the guy with the Odessas was not real happy. So what I did with him was I said, relax, it's a mistake, it happens. I'll send you another box of green dragons, which I did. And everything mellowed out. But oh yeah, when it happens, you're freaked. You're like, oh my goodness.
If anyone here is listening to this podcast and is ever going to buy anything from us, just if something goes wrong, please relax.
Right.
Like we'll make it better. Like
Yeah.
don't freak out. Like if you get a dead fish, whatever, like it's inevitable to happen. Just don't freak out.
Yeah.
Like it makes our lives harder.
Yeah.
We're like none of us were like insane enough to put a dead fish in a bag.
Yeah.
Or something that we think would die. But on that opportunity thing that you were talking about, I feel like even Select Aquatics, from what I understand, like was an opportunity for you that you took. Like,
Yeah. Well, it was right. The timing was good.
Yeah.
Because the ALA as a national organization was in decline. The hobby nationally, there was lots of talk about it being in decline. The demographic of the hobby was changing. A lot of the old people were getting out of it and getting rid of their tanks. Young people were coming up, but they were coming up with an entirely different foundation to keep fish. They didn't come from a background of having read TFH encyclopedia, like I did. They just saw something pretty, and they, at a pet store, someone sold them a 10-gallon tank, and here they are. So there was a lot of transition going on when I started Select Aquatics. That was 2008, 2009. And I dealt with a lot of people who wrote me. They had no idea how to keep fish, and here they are wanting a rare Mexican live bear that has special qualities. I have a guy just right now. I just sent fish out to him 2 days ago, and he's been a customer for 10 years. Real nice guy, sweetheart guy. He was always keeping easy fish before, and then he decided to order some tequilas from me. So I said, okay, I hope he's read up on how to keep them. They're not hard to keep, but you got to keep them cooler. They have to stay below 75 degrees. They stop breeding at about 2 years old, even though they live to be 4 years old. And, they have some dietary things, but you keep them by themselves because they're extremely rare and all of this. So he writes me back with a letter, and I'm talking about how he's going to put them in a tank with a bunch of swordtails and mollies, and will there be any problems? Well, swordtails and mollies stay in the upper 70s, low 80s. Swordtails are upper 70s. Tequilas, you can't go above 75. And you don't really want to put him in a tank with a bunch of bigger fish. And I'm sending him a bunch of young fish, So it made for 3 days of my sending back to him long emails. It's like, here's what you need to do to keep this fish.
because those fish, like I promise, it'd be hard to find a breeder's information guide on all of them. Like online, like
Right.
you'd get like betas because like they're so easy to keep, betas or betas or whatever.
Sure.
But like when you start talking about tequila,
You
live
can't
bears,
find printed stuff on Goodeids, There's not many books published. The Atlas of Live Bears is the best, but I've seen copies of that go from $300 to $3,000 today. There was originally a $22 book, coffee table book, produced by TFH. I have a copy of it upstairs. Many people have copies of it. As people are getting older and they're retiring and they're selling their books, they're becoming available. You can find them. Someone showed me one on Amazon they found the other day for $125. But that's the only book I know of that has really in-depth stuff on Goodeids written. And even that information now the book is 30 years old. So there's species in the hobby now that hadn't yet been discovered back then.
Yeah, so like it's just, I guess for that customer, they just think, oh, well, these are just going to be like another live bear I can throw in there.
Right,
But in reality, there's like a reason they kind of go extinct.
right.
So what I was going to ask is, so did Select Aquatics start when you moved to Denver, or were you running it back in Sacramento when you lived there?
No, I moved here in 2000, and Select Aquatics started formally I started putting the website together in 2008.
Okay.
So It's been going since then.
Nearly 16 years now.
Well, 2009 was when was the official thing, because that's when the
Okay.
license is, business license. So I always say that I start my 15th year in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I wanted to ask, like,
yeah.
how have you found fish breeding as a business and like a lifestyle? Like, how's that been for you?
That's a good question. I went into it thinking I was doing something that a lot of people did. And I went into it thinking I was immediately walking into a lot of competition. Because I just assume, oh, everybody's heard of people selling fish out of their basement, There aren't that many, and there are a few, and I'm finally getting in touch with a few people, and I'm in touch with a couple people who are just starting and want to do this, and have turned to me, and I'm really encouraging people to do this, and try to get them going, and not make the mistakes I made, where they don't choose 30 species,
Yeah.
pick 5 or 10 that you really want to focus on and do that. But I found that as a rule, I'm more often than not the only one doing this. And others that do it, I hear about, often not in a good way. I would love to hear that there's somebody just cranking out stuff and doing it really well, and their fish are really quality, and they ship quality. But if you were to ask me right now, who to buy from that's also doing a great job, I'd have a hard time coming up, with names.
How about the lifestyle too of like fish breeding? Because I think once you sign up for it, people forget that this is like something that you can't. It's not like a McDonald's model. Like, you can't just get someone to like do all the work for you. Like, I found it takes someone who like me. Like, even with my fish room, I've got a ton of tanks, and I remember thinking like when I started it that I could pay people to do what I do, but you can't. Like,
Right.
there's like a very specific. Like, I've got. At this point, I'm still young. I've got lots to learn fish breeding, but like years of accrued information that's in my head that lets me understand what's going on in a tank, and I can't pay someone to do that. Like, I can't pay them enough to care. So like, if I have staff working in my fish room, they're not going to do the same job that I'm going to do. Like, they won't check like a tank, for instance. There might be a bristlenose in a tank, right? And you throw a bunch of eggs in there, the bristlenose just eats them. And they're like, well, there's no fry coming out. And I check under the sponge filter.
Right.
It's just, that's like a simple example. So what I was going to say is like the lifestyle of breeding fish is like constant. Every day.
Every time you go into a business for yourself, and I was aware of this, I knew that it was going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
And people have told me that people who run pet stores go into it thinking it's not a lot of work, and always end up finding out that it's much more work than they expected.
Or even like they know it's going to be a lot of work, but they're like, oh, but I love fish so much that it won't feel like work.
Right.
So, yeah.
That gets old after 7 days a week when you're up every day at 6 to have to do it, what you have to do. I want to do this because I'm having a good time. And as a rule, I really enjoy it. Customers don't realize how one person getting angry at you can ruin your whole day,
Yeah, it does.
I mean, we're sensitive, we're real people.
I've got like a bleeding heart, so it's like,
yeah,
I just want everyone, like, I hate that. Like, I really do. I don't do well with confrontation or anything like that, or like having to fire people or anything like that. It sucks.
I've been through that because I was a manager and I've run businesses before, so I can do it, but I don't like to do it. And
I don't think anyone does.
In my life, I was talking with Lord just about this the other day. I've had 4 times when I've had to tell somebody, I'm sorry, but there's too many red flags in your email. I can't do business with you, because basically I'm not going to do business with a jerk, and you're being a jerk.
What other jobs did you do before this?
Well, I was a K-12 educator for 15 years. I was a metals broker for a year. I toured for 15 years as a professional musician, including playing with a number of name bands.
Which, can we name them or no?
I toured with Heart for a short period of time in the 90s.
Okay, yeah, I'm too young.
I was with the Dutch Falcone Twisted Orchestra for 6 years. I was with the La Fuente Merengue Latin Band up and down the East Coast for 6 years. I was with the U.S. Marine Band for 4 years. I worked for Hanna-Barbera Productions as a staff musician for a year. So I did all those things. And I very much feel from the time that I was a teacher, and I was a band director, so I recorded the kids, and that that taught me how to do post-production work, both in video and audio. And I also had to publish a bunch of stuff and get stuff out because it's just the nature of the business of being an instructor. So I had to learn to use a lot of Photoshop and all kind of stuff. So I have many times, as I started Select Aquatics, thought that my whole life was preparing me for doing what I'm doing now.
Interesting.
Everything up to this point has got me. The fact of standing in front of audiences and speaking to clubs comes right out of the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can stand in front of a group and make a total fool of myself, and it doesn't bother me in the least.
Yeah.
Whereas other people aren't going to be that comfortable with it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not comfortable with that yet. I've got
Yeah.
like my first proper talk coming up, like ever.
Yeah.
And we were joking about it at McDonald's. I still haven't
Yeah.
got my slides together properly. And
Oh, there comes a time. I mean, I filmed some of my earlier talks, and I always ask to get a film of a talk if I can get it. And you don't see it, you don't feel it, but when you're watching yourself, you realize, wow, you're really stilted. It's obvious that you're thinking hard.
Yeah.
It's obvious, And I used to think, well, when I was a classroom teacher and I was a fairly popular band director, I was a band director, and I had no problems to get the best I could out of the kids, and I would just act like an idiot, And there was things, and so now when I give a talk, I'll dance around and act crazy on stage and whatever to get people's attention.
Plus, when it's filmed, you can like look back on it and improve.
Right.
With that as well.
Very much. Yeah.
So how does the fish breeding business compare to those other jobs?
I'm always in control.
Yep.
Where I wasn't in control before. Sometimes that's not good. Like this morning where I woke up and found out that I lost a batch of Odessas.
Oh, it's just
That's my
heartbreaking.
own fault.
Yeah.
It's the only thing you can do. You go back and you start over again.
That's the thing with breeding. It's just like you just got to eat it.
Yeah.
Like I just say you just eat shit. Like you
Well,
just do.
actually, you're not eating it. You're learning something new.
You are, but you have to still eat it. Just go,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, and the little bit you learn isn't worth all the effort that it took.
The worst bit's cleaning up the mistake.
Yeah.
Like sucking out those dead fish. It's
Yeah.
like just heartbreaking.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I interrupted
So you
you.
got to do it. No, it's you got to be really organized. When I first started this, I thought, gee, it's my day job, so I can do this. And I had 120 tanks. I had 30 species of fish. Some of them I had never bred before. Some of them I had bred before, but had no idea how difficult it is to raise them up in large numbers.
Yep.
Some fish will breed for you, and you'll get a couple spawns, but it's hell to pay to get up 3 or 4 tanks full of them. They just don't do it. They crash on you and whatever. And so I scheduled myself, for an 8-hour day, and every half hour I would do different tasks, whether it's water changes, changing box filters, moving fish between tanks, whatever, thinking it's my day job. I can do this. This is no problem. But I wasn't aware, after about 2 or 3 years of being tied to this schedule, not only how stressful it was, but how it was just wearing me down. And so I had to find ways of, and I wasn't in control because I had all these little things, and you forget something, man, and, a valve doesn't get turned on, and you end up killing a bunch of fish.
Yeah, like your wife's like wants you to go for dinner or something like that, and you're like just down there trying to scramble to get all the little jobs done, and you leave that like one job.
Yeah.
And that's what the mistake comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, like staying organized. Yeah, like
It's just human nature. As your brain can only accommodate so many things and keep things up in the air so many times. So over the time I've been doing this, I've just gotten better and better and better at managing what I do, and that's been the biggest part of the job. I can say with great pride that I've only had one box that didn't go out when I said it was going to, and of all the boxes I've shipped.
I wish I
And,
could say that.
Yeah, I only had once. It was a case where I had somebody going out on a day when I don't normally ship. It was the only guy going out, and I forgot about him. And the next day I said, "Oh man, I should have shipped that box of fish out yesterday." So you call him immediately. You apologize.
I feel like you can like apologize for most of your mistakes in business.
can.
That's the best thing to do.
But me, if I make a mistake with somebody, then I'm really concerned about not making another one with that customer.
Yeah, same. Yeah. But it's so easy to remedy it too, especially when you're breeding. Like you said, you always throw like one extra fish in every bag just to account for anything that could go wrong.
Right.
Plus, if it gets there, someone's like, "Oh, sweet, bonus fish."
Right. Nobody complains about an extra fish.
No one complains about that. But like, if you did have a bad interaction with a customer, it's so easy to remedy it. Like in our game, I mean, obviously, you don't want to just keep giving away fish, but like you kind of got that luxury when you're not.
Well, the thing is I came to the conclusion early on that the amount of food necessary for me to breed a few more fish than I need should be manageable. In other words, if I say I'm going to sell so many fish, so I have to keep this many fish on hand, well, let's always keep 10% more. and so then that way, that's my buffer with every order that goes out, and that's what I do.
And how many days a week are you working at the moment?
I don't have a day off.
Yeah.
Every day is Sunday, is Tuesday, is Wednesday, is Saturday. Yeah.
And how do you find that?
That's getting to me. That I'm looking forward to having more. My only days off are when I travel somewhere, and I can take up to 2 days, sometimes 3, when I
Yeah.
go speak somewhere. And that's the only times I go away from the fish room. So that's kind of what this last 3 years is of restructuring things, closing down some tanks, reevaluating what I'm doing. I almost can't say how old I'm getting because I don't want to even think about 70, you know. But it's at a point where I have to do something. So, and of course, you know, my wife wants to go on a vacation once in a while. We'd love to travel or tour or something, which, you know, hasn't been an option. So,
Yeah, I mean, it is like that's what people don't realize when they sign up, like the breeding stuff. I feel like,
and I'm in a part of the country where fish keeping isn't real big. This is Colorado. You know, I could easily get myself in trouble by saying things that I'm not going to say. But the point being that I ship very little to Colorado. Almost no one ever buys fish from me here, and finding people who have kept aquariums growing up is almost impossible. So I do have someone that's been with me for about 5 years, but his thing is that he can come in and he can mechanically do filters and do things he needs to be done. But like you say, he's not someone I would trust to have trying to breed things, and he's not interested in it. You know.
yeah, you need to be interested.
Yeah.
I think like one of the best things that you've been doing with the room, and I've got to start doing this too, is it's better to do a few things really, really well, and it's like less painful on you, just to do like, you know, maybe like I think we were talking with Dean about it, but like do like 5 things
Yeah.
amazingly, like kind of like what you're doing, than it is to do like 35 things kind of shit.
Right.
Like, the problem with me is like I really love fish, so it's like hard because I like don't want to like let go of stuff, and then it's like the breeder's dilemma of like, okay, well I'm doing 5 things, it wouldn't be that hard to do the 6th thing,
Right.
and then you kind of like do the 6th thing, but you're stretching, and then you still add
Oh,
back.
it's very counterintuitive because you add that 6th thing. It's wow, I'm making a little bit more money. I can stick this in the day. I've got time, and before you know it, you've got 30 things, and then it's like, okay, you know, this isn't good. When I first started, I was first scheduling it out and getting it going, I would get really stressed. I mean, I had mornings when I couldn't get out of bed.
I hate that. I had that too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just something you get past. You know, you just figure out how to manage things so that.
You got to figure out what part of it's stressing you out, because like
Yeah.
you wouldn't have got into fish breeding if you didn't love fish.
Right.
So it's like, oh, well, okay, maybe I'm getting really stressed because like I constantly need to feed these ram babies.
Right.
And it's like, well, do I let go of everything and just do the rams and do them really, really, really well? Mm-hmm. Or do I let go of the rams and do the other stuff that doesn't make me feel that way?
Right.
Because like, yeah, the hardest thing is like just that management of like, I mean, I've got other parts of my business too that add to it, like YouTube and all
Right.
that sort of stuff. But yeah, that fish breeding, like I'm hell bent on it now. It's like, okay, let's just pick like 6 things and like
Right.
do those and then cycle through them. So I was going to ask, how did you select the ones you do now? Because you've gone from like what, 30?
Right. And I was going to say earlier on when I mentioned we go into this, and I went into this throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what people were going to buy. I came out of the ALA going to the conventions, and I knew what their low-hanging fruit were. But how that's going to sell in the marketplace, I don't know. Who's going to actually pay to ship these fish to them? So that was a big part of it, was narrowing it down through experience as to which ones are always going to sell for you and that people are always going to want. And even more importantly, which are the ones that aren't that interesting to other people, so that they'll breed them and sell them. We were talking about it with the tequilas.
Yeah.
You know, tequilas, man, you can't get a more important fish than that. But because it's not the flashiest thing and they have a couple little tricks to breeding them, nobody else is breeding them, you know?
So is that bad then for keeping them as a species, or are you saying that's a good thing?
Well, it's good as long as I'm willing to do it.
Yeah.
But if I stop breeding tequilas, then you're just going to see occasional pairs appear on Aquabid, you know?
Yeah.
And you need somebody else that's breeding them by the hundreds and can ship them out.
So you kind of like decided that like you'd make that your thing.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Green dragons were that for years.
Yeah.
The Cuban family were also. Odessas have been that for years.
So what did you have to let go of? Was there anything like in that breeding program where you're like, man, this is like...
Oh yeah, there's a number of fish that are no longer here. Fish that I like,
That's heartbreaking too.
Like for instance, Pasilia villifera. We talked about those guys. I love the villifera. Great fish. Had them here for about 6-7 years. There are fish like the Montezuma is, where you can keep them if you've only keeping 5 or 6 fish and you have the time to devote to them. But when I'm keeping them as one of 30 fish, then I'm always having to spend a lot of extra effort and a lot of extra time, and running into little problems here and there that I don't expect, that I don't want. I, for instance, found when I was building these species up that no matter how hard I tried, I can't breed the Odessas and the Cynodonas at the same time. One of them is going to get screwed up. Something's going to happen to one or the other of them where they're not going to get fed as well, or water's going to go or whatever, where I just don't have the time to keep as close an eye on them when I'm doing them both at the same time. That totally stresses me out. So now I learned that a good 6-7 years ago. Never breed those two at the same time. And that's a limitation that you wouldn't expect when you're setting up your day. So what? I just do this and I do that. But it's not that way.
I've got a question. So since you've narrowed down the breeding program, this is a bit personal, but like, has that affected the income of the business, or do you find that's like the same?
Right now, I'm doing fairly well because the fish that I am focusing on, I'm selling more of because I have them, and they're as predicted, they're selling. So it's not like by my getting rid of all the swordtails, which I used to have 6 different species of swordtails here. Now I have no swordtails here. I'm not making that much less money because I'm selling a ton of tequilas, and I'm selling and the furcidans. I've got people. I usually keep track of people when they write me and they say I really want this fish. I always tell them I don't have it. Check my word, la da da. But then I'll usually keep their name set aside so that in the future I can go back to it if I need a customer and I can contact them again.
That's smart.
So I have a huge list of people that want the furcidans, and I still receive emails at least every day from someone looking for them, and I'm not going to have them ready for 2 or 3 more months.
So if someone wanted to start up what you're doing in their basement, like, I guess one of the first things that I can think of that you might say as advice would be to like focus on the customers firstly, like figure out who they are and like start building that relationship with them, because that's such a smart idea. Like saving down names, like I wish I had the time to do that, or like some software to do it, because like we get emails all the time, when are you going to have black rams?
Right.
And it's like, well, we don't have them. But if we'd save that, it's like the second we get black rams, it's like likely that person might be like, they might not have space or be even actively searching, but they see the opportunity and they'll grab it.
Right.
So I guess my question is, what if someone wanted to do what you're doing, what would your advice be?
Talk to somebody like myself or yourself and learn from their experience. What did you carry that you had that you no longer carry because you found they weren't worth it for you? Which are the ones that no matter how hard you try, you can't keep them in stock, but everybody wants them,
Those are the ones that you want.
Those are the ones you want to start off with. And also, too, there's some fish you should keep that if that they may disappear if you don't, and you've got to have a few of those going. There's been a number of fish I've kept through here over the year, and they would even sell well, but they may not do well in my water. They may not do well in my conditions. So that's another variable too.
Yeah, because you don't want to be playing with water.
Oh, I do a lot of playing with water.
You do?
But yeah, to get it right. Yeah.
What do you have to do?
Well, for like when I was keeping the villifera, they required, my water is 90 ppm and 7.4 pH.
Okay.
So it's a little too soft and a little too
alkaline.
acid. Well, they would prefer to be around 7.7, 7.8.
All right, you got all the live bears. Yeah,
So I'm live So, there's certain fish that I would love to have here and love to have more of, that I had and people want. Xiphophorus birchmani, Xiphophorus clemensae, fish I've all had here but they didn't do well because my water isn't good. So those come off the top. You can't keep those anymore. Giardinus metallicus, love that fish, but they didn't do well here for me. The villifera, I was constantly wrestling with their water quality, and they just took a lot of time and effort and everything else. And I did ship over 1,000 of them, and I fortunately have a couple customers, one who's still selling them today and has them on hand today if you want them, to email me and I'll hook. Matter of fact, his information is even posted on my homepage, so he has them. So, go to him. And for him, he's only carrying 3 species. So he can focus on them and do what needs to be done. So yeah. So I mean, I would love to carry the swordtails, but if you want to go into this and you want to do swordtails, that would be great. Man, the hobby needs somebody to breed swordtails. But then just only choose 3 or 4 swordtails and really focus on them and build them out and keep them going.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I still find that so hard because then like I'll see something and it's just so hard to not.
We all do that, yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to talk about as well. One of the things we talked about in the car on the way up was because you're talking about the green dragons, and you get to this point in the year where you're selling them and you release them, they're sold in under an hour. It's just a huge sum of cash comes in.
Right.
But it's like you actually figured out because these ones you ship out, your last ones, right? That's it.
What's coming up? I'm going to be satisfying the wait list I have for young sex pairs. Then I expect I'll have quite a few left over. I'll put them up as available, and then when those sell out, then that will be it for me. Except for my own personal, I probably won't get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
But I'll probably hold on to a few myself.
But like you figured out that they were actually losing you money.
Right. The green dragons, people complain, how can you spend $35, charge $35 a fish? Well, I crank out. I'm able to produce. If I raise 2,000 fish, I'm able to produce the 165 longfin, good quality green dragons that I sell. The rest of them are albinos, short fins, poor color, poor finnage, whatever. And I feed 180 pounds of green beans a month, and I feed the Pee-wee Cichlid Extreme mini pellet. 5 pounds of that is $45. And so there's $300 a month just for the beans and such. So I figured out over time, 12 months worth of food, and then 160 green dragons. Okay, this is what I'm charging for them. This is what this costs, and I am losing money. So not a lot, but enough that these are not a money maker. But they're getting better with each generation. The number of good fish is getting better with each generation. People who are picking them up and selling them now are having better luck with them. I've seen a couple of people that are selling fish. There's a guy in Texas that are producing some pretty good quality fish. Although the thing is, I don't know how long. The people that I've seen that have done really good work have gotten in it and gotten out. So maybe they've only done a few spawns.
And they realize quickly or something.
Maybe, or they're just not interested in it. But you got to do it long term. And so I'm expecting that there will be people who will figure them out and get them produce good quality fish coming down the road, and you can make money on them certainly. It's just that right now they're only in their first few generations, and
they're just
to
not
get that emerald green color is not coming right away with every fish.
I wonder, like, the first thing I would do in that situation is bump the price up, but is that just like going to cause more problems for you, or?
I would, but
Because I reckon you could sell them for 70.
I could, but man, I feel just.
It doesn't feel right for you.
When I was doing them before, I would sell 4 fish plus 1 extra for what shipping was at that time, which was $130. So it was $270, and I think that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
To buy.
Oh, yes.
To buy 5 fish.
It's like good luck convincing your mum to buy them.
Oh, exactly.
If you're a kid, yeah.
So if you talk about doubling the price on them, that takes me, So with these really top quality ones where I'm doing just 1 pair, I bounced around for a long time what I should charge for them. They're going for $625 a pair on Aquabid.
For green dragons.
Yeah. The last 2 years, there have been 4 people that have posted them for $625 a pair. Which because customers send me, have you seen this ad? And they're claiming them to be your fish. 2 of those times, they sent me the ad to say, can you verify these are your fish? They weren't even my fish. I mean, I can tell easily whether they came from me or they didn't. And they were selling for $625 a pair. It was interesting because one of those pairs, when I said they weren't my fish, then they dropped down to like $90. And but anyway. I'm not going to sell them for $625, and I don't want to sell them for $400, because to me that's just gouging. I don't want to gouge anybody, and there's too much of that in this business. So $270, for 4 plus 1 fish to me was right on the outskirts. So anyway, I was trying to come up with a price for 1 pair. So if I have $100 shipping, so they're going to be $100. So then 1 pair, if they were at the 1.5 inch rate, they're 35 a piece. A pair would be $70. Well, I need to be more than that. So I was thinking like around 150, 175 a pair. Then you add the shipping to that, and that brings you up around 350. Actually, it was anyway. The bottom rate was, when I looked at the postage, was 350 for a pair, which to me seems high, but it's really my effort to keep the price as low as possible. You know.
Were you gonna say something?
No, I just wonder because, like, when you say green dragons, does the coloration come from what they eat?
No, it's in the genome. They are greenfish. The L338, which is where one of the three species that was hybridized to create that fish, is known for producing greenfish. They're not often. They don't often produce greenfish, but people have bred them before. This was a line that had been explored in Germany, I understand, in the late 80s.
The green dragons.
Yeah. And so I got them because there was a guy in Florida that went to an estate sale. I'm sorry, there's a guy in Chicago went to an estate sale in Florida of somebody who had passed away and was selling off his fish room. And he was doing a bunch of work with plecos. They didn't know what he was doing. The guy who bought the fish didn't know what he was doing, but he had some albinos he really liked. And so he wanted to develop a red pectoral fin albino fish. So he bought up all of his fish. So he started breeding these albinos to strengthen that red pectoral in the spine. And unfortunately, these albinos, at least in his eyes, didn't produce all albinos. They would produce these mutations, a portion of their spawns, that would be this off yellowish green, kind of a leucistic mix kind of thing, which sometimes albinos will do. And he raised them up. And supposedly his wife looked at them at the kitchen table one morning and said, those look like green dragons. So she supposedly came up with that term. So he called a friend of mine in Denver and said, I have these really ugly fish. They're kind of cool though. The fins are really long, but they're a mishmash of color, and I don't really know what they are, but my wife calls them green dragons. Are you interested in them? So he said, sure. So he sent him a pair. And so my friend in Denver, who had a big fish room, bred them. And he had a bunch of spawns, but he didn't have the room to grow them out. So he calls me up, because you have a bunch of tanks, and I had a reputation, ironically, in this area for not being able to breed plecos.
Really?
Yeah, nobody. For some reason, I couldn't breed plecos. I had plecos for years, and they would never spawn.
You've got like the perfect water for it too.
Yeah, but people, well, I just wasn't. The tanks weren't clean enough, and I wasn't feeding the right foods, whatever. So over time, I had this reputation. Like, you can give them to Greg, he'll never breed them, So he says, I'll give you the babies, you raise them up, and then you sell them through your website, and then we'll split the difference 50-50. I said, okay, that's a terrible deal, but I wanted the fish. And so I raised the fish up, and they were all nothing. They were black. He called them. He said, these are the greatest fish. They're producing chocolates and albinos and this, that. But it was just a mishmash of way over hybridized fish. But in that batch of 250 fish, there were 6 fish that had that leucistic yellowish in them that, when blended with the brown, looked like green when you put a flashlight on them. I grabbed those 6 fish, and of those 6 fish, 1 pair were long fins. So I grabbed that pair. And I figured, well, I'll try to breed these. As time passes, this guy calls me from Denver. Greg, yeah, where's the money for all these fish I gave you? I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, we're going to sell them 50-50, and you're going to split the money with me. I said, I haven't sold a single fish. He goes, why? I says, because they look like crap, and none of them are green dragons. And he says, nah, you're ripping me off. You're taking advantage of me. I said, no, really, I'm not. And so he says, okay. I said, look, Bob, I'll put them in buckets, and I'll bring them all back to you. You can have every fish. I've raised them all up. He says, you still have them? I said, yes. I said I haven't sold I haven't sold a single fish. He says, okay. Well, he just happened to step out of his house, because I put him in a bucket and got in my car right then, because I wanted to get rid of him. And I drove him down to Denver, and I put him all on his porch, and he wasn't home. So he comes home after about a half hour with like 4 buckets on his porch full of all these plecos. And he calls me up laughing. He goes, okay, you win, And he goes, yeah, these are. So I had that 1 pair of fish, and that's where this all started from.
Damn.
And
you were saying, how many does it throw now per 100? Like, would you get longfin green dragon?
How many, like, when you breed a pair?
Yeah.
When they first start, you'll get your first 2 spawns are usually 40 to 75.
Yep.
But I've had big mature spawns, big mature pairs that have done 150 to 200 at a time, but those are rare.
And what are what I was asking is like the percentage of green dragon in that?
20%.
Damn. Well, I mean, that's still a massive improvement from where it was.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But that's what happens when you know 12, 13 years of selective breeding, and so you know we're getting them there. We're getting them there. I've explored trying to pursue the albinos that they've produced.
If I was you, man, like just man to man, like I think you need to bump them up in price this year, because especially once we post our videos on them, they're gonna go. Like you're gonna have people waiting there for like.
Well, selling them for $350 a pair, I think should do good. If I've got about 35 people on the wait list now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that should.
I don't think it's a price gouge as well with all that work at all. So that's just me saying.
Awesome species.
Yeah, I don't think it's a price gouge at all. That's just.
I would love to see them produce, have some other people do a good job, and see them out become
Exactly.
regular
I think
hobby.
if people spend a lot of money on them, you'll see that.
Yeah.
So I think you should.
And I wish we had them in Australia because we'd probably do it too.
Imagine the price that they'd be in Australia.
It'd be ridiculous. Like, I don't know.
Like I mean, even like super red longfins came in, they were like $1,000 a pair. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I know. I have people. Oh my goodness, you know, $50 for a group of 6. And how much is postage? $70. No way. You know. So
So if we had to say like someone's out there listening to this podcast and they're, despite what we've told about breeding fish, it is an awesome job. But if they're like, okay, I'm ready to do all the work or whatever, I think one of the big things is getting your customers. How would you recommend getting customers for
customers
this?
isn't hard.
Okay.
Getting customers isn't hard. In the fish business, my experience and what I tell other people is, you stick at it for 3 years, and you are at the top of the business in no time. No one stays. Most people get into it. They make what they can. They sell what they have. They get out of it. End of story. And so if you're appearing on Aquabid for longer than 3 years, you've become a fixture in the hobby. And so if you're consistent and you're nice and you don't have you don't have a reputation for treating customers badly, and you're consistent for 3 years, and then you should be able to do it. Aquabid is big. That's where you start off at. Put stuff on Aquabid. When you write your blurb for your sales on Aquabid, always make a reference in the sales blurb to your website and to other fish you have. No one ever does that, but I always say if you don't see the fish you're looking for here, or you've seen something here at Aquabid that you don't see now, email me and we can talk more about it. That way I don't lose any customers that see me for somewhere else.
Like I think like if you do get a sale, chase up that sale.
Yeah.
Because like the easiest thing to sell a person buying fish is another fish.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then get a website. Make sure your website's easy to get to and navigable. And then respond to all your emails, within 24 hours. And then for myself, I have the levamisole. So I know that when someone writes me and they need levamisole, they're dealing with a disease. So they want treatment right away. So I always make a point to get the levamisole out the door as soon as I get payment. So by the next day, I always ship.
Yeah. Yes.
So everybody who buys it from me knows they're going to get it shipped the next day. Sometimes I'm out of town, I'm speaking, and there's a day delay or whatever, but that doesn't happen very often. And then the fact that you do that gets onto social media fast. People say I bought from Greg Sage, and he actually did ship the next day.
Yeah.
So you're manipulating social media, and so the combination of getting good comments on social media, being on Aquabid, having a website, and then if you can get some YouTube videos out there. At first, yes. What I do with my videos is as I'd make a video, I'd post it, and then I would check my numbers visits in 24 hours. And then I'd write that number down on a board in my office. Then every video that got done, I would mark what my count was after 24 hours. And I could see the growth in the viewership. So if all of a sudden I had a video that came out and it tanked, then I knew I did something really wrong with that video. Or if I saw really a big numbers on a certain video and then really low afterwards, I needed to do another video that covers that topic. And so I did that with all my first videos for the first couple of years. And my first video I remember well, it's 24 hours, I had 65 views.
That's still good.
Well, maybe. That was my very first one, 65 views. And then by the end of the time I was doing it, my 24 hours, I was up to about 575, which doesn't compare to the numbers you were mentioning earlier, but I'm dealing with a pretty lofty...
Like we do completely different things on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like it's not like... And I've posted for years and years, like
Right.
weekly.
I started posting actually now. I've been doing it now for about 6 years.
Well, when I do my talk, that's one of the big things too. I think like marketing yourself when you're breeding fish, like it's so easy because like people, if you can just like consistently make videos about your fish room and like your stuff, and people like will ask, people will actually chase you down to get what you have if you do have cool stuff, and
Well, it's important for people to see you and get to know you too.
that too. Your story, it's like the story behind you. Like
Yeah.
like these green dragon plecos now are like just booming in price because like when I'm thinking about them, I'm like, there's that just amazing story behind them of like these like pretty much crappy fish that
Yeah.
like, and then like you bred them and got like 2,
Yeah.
and then like from that it's like been like 13 or 10-year process of
Right.
just breeding to get them to where they are now. So it's like creating that on YouTube is probably the
Well, and
easiest
another
way.
thing too with this business, you talk about breeding, and you do anything long enough, you become good at it.
Yeah.
And you make a lot of mistakes, and that's normal. I've had 3 times in my life downstairs. When I used to have the place fully running and do a water change, I have all these knobs. You saw them downstairs. I actually counted them one time. I turned 92 knobs every day to do a water change down there. I don't anymore because I cut back a little bit. Now it's about half that. But there was a time when I was doing 92 valve changes a day to do this. And so I had 3 times when a valve broke. One of the, not the little valves, but one of the servo attached to the main control unit. They will break over time, and I've had twice when those have broken, and I had once when I forget what exactly happened. I didn't turn a knob or something, but I wiped out like huge rows, entire racks of fish, hundreds and hundreds of fish. Once I killed over 300 green dragons. I mean,
Jeez.
I was like so sick. They were all babies, but I was just sick. Once I killed about 16 adult green dragons, that really made me sick because they were all my breeders and stuff. But it was long ago, and it was a time when the fish weren't that quality yet. So it's like, okay, I can move ahead. But those things happen.
Yeah, it's
Those
just
things happen.
heartbreaking. I mean, it's happened to like me too.
And so now I'm at a point where I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had a bad thing happen in my fish room now for a good 4 years.
I think that's probably too because of the scale back, for sure. Just the
Yeah.
ability to focus on more stuff. You pick up the errors coming through and
Yeah.
all of that. But I guess we'll kind of wrap up. But I want to know too, what are your future plans kind of going ahead now, next like 5 years?
I have a big project I've been working on for about the last 4 years. It's called. It's going to be an app. Aquarium Care app is the name of it, and it's going to work as an app, but it's going to be a website. And so you can go online, and there's 11 major categories of fish keeping, and you click what category you want, and then it goes through, and you just click through, and you can find any information on any aspect of freshwater fish care you want.
Crazy.
So, and it's all from my point of view, and it's all based on my experience, and it's all based on the experience of Select Aquatics. It's currently over 1,100 pages.
Is there a way you can actually print that? Like, I know you said it's way too big to print.
I imagine there is.
Because, like, I think that you should just do it for the sake of it, for that much work.
I might, but I'm at a point now where I've done a tremendous amount of work on it, and it's about 70% done. But that 30% work that's still left is going to take me a good 6 months of daily work to finish. And so I've taken the work I've done so far to various clubs I've spoken at, and I've met with members after hours and said, okay, here's what I'm working on. What do you think of it? They all think it's the best thing since sliced bread. They just think this is the most navigable, most easy, and it's done on a neural network so that you can go anywhere under any topic. Like, let's say you're looking at pH under setting up a basic tank, and setting up a basic tank. What is pH? What does it do? Gee, well, I get to the pH page. I'm reading it. It says, how does it apply to breeding? I can go over the breeding section, and it tells me how pH is important to breeding. Wow, what if I want to change my pH? Boom, water chemistry change. It tells me how I change my pH. So everything like that is all done that way.
So that's like the big project.
That's my big project. And then the way that it's going to make money is that I'm going to put it up my plan is to put it up for about a year, track the traffic to all the pages, and then all the most frequently traveled pages we'll put advertising on.
Mm-hmm.
For that right now, fish businesses don't have an outlet to. Keeping Fish Simple is a perfect example. We could put an ad for Keeping Fish Simple on a frequently, you know, and then based on how often a page is visited, will come down to, you know, how much it costs to do that.
What I'd also love is that I would love to have like that massive book, because that would be so cool, and I'd be like impossible to ship around to because it'd be so heavy and all that. But
Right.
It's like a car owner's manual.
exactly,
When
but
you
like
open up the glove box, it's got everything.
no, I swear I don't think anyone's got that
No.
for fish, like a whole lifelong guide of.
No, I don't think so.
So that would crush, I reckon, too.
So basically, the way the page it's worked out is like, okay, you go to a page, and it brings up whatever the topic is, and then you have 14 links.
Yeah.
And the links are going to be 7 links within the topic area that you're within, be it setting up a new tank, breeding, water quality, whatever it is. And then you have another 7 links that take you into any other topic area. So you can look at whatever your topic is as it applies to one of those other areas.
Yeah.
And then every time you go in, I had someone write me early on. I wrote a lot of customers to say, what would you like to see? What would you want this to be? And one guy said to me, I want it to be something where I can start on it and I can find myself stuck in it all day long, reading and reading and reading, and never come across the same thing twice about any topic having to do with fish keeping and so that's kind of what this is set up to be.
Well, I'll try and support that in any way I can, but I really appreciate you letting us into your home and picking us up as well. And
We'll talk more about that down the road.
Sorry?
I said, we'll talk more about that down
Yeah,
the road.
definitely. But yeah, thank you so much for having us. Like, we've had a great time, and this was a really cool stop. You got a really amazing room. So yeah, we'll
Thanks,
wrap it
man.
up here.
No, it's been great to meet you guys. Glad we were able to pull this together.
No, it was great.
And sounds like you've got some pretty hectic days ahead of you.
Yeah, we've got a few more. Like, we've got a couple of chill days here in Denver, just to relax, and then we go to Florida. That'd be pretty cool.
Good luck on your talk, man.
Yeah, I need it. But yeah. Anyways, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.